I never imagined the quiet whisper of one woman could silence the years of fear I carried inside me. That night, the air was heavy, not with violence, but with something deeper. I stood still, heart pounding, while the headlights from a parked car painted the sidewalk in white and shadow. Inside that car was a man I once feared more than anyone. And beside me, her hand gripped mine with a calm I didn't yet understand. She leaned close, her voice barely above a breath, and said, "Let him watch." For a moment, everything paused. Time, sound, thought. I wasn't sure if I should run, scream, cry, but I didn't do any of those things. Instead, I stayed, and that changed everything. The days before everything changed felt almost unreal now, like pages from someone else's life. Mornings started with the soft click of a kettle, her humming in the kitchen, the way she poured coffee into my favorite chipped mug before I even asked. Our apartment wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Light streamed through the windows and danced on the worn wooden floor, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was living, not just surviving. We had a rhythm, the kind of ease that comes from honesty and comfort. She knew my favorite songs, the ones that made me cry without knowing why. I knew when she needed quiet and when she needed to be held. We laughed a lot. God, we laughed. It was the kind of laughter that made your stomach hurt and your soul feel full. I remember thinking, maybe this is what healing feels like, peace without the need to explain why I needed it so badly. But peace doesn't last forever. Not when you have a past that doesn't know how to stay buried. It started with a glimpse, just a quick flash of a car parked across the street while I walked home from the market. At first, I thought it was coincidence. Just another car. Maybe I was being paranoid. I told myself I'd imagined the familiarity in that dented bumper, the peeling sticker on the rear window. I kept walking, clutching the grocery bag tighter than necessary. The next day, the same car was there again. And again the day after that. She noticed it before I said anything. "That car's been out there a lot," she said, peeking through the blinds. I nodded, heart sinking into my stomach. I didn't want to say it out loud, didn't want to breathe life into the dread curling in my chest. But I couldn't keep it in much longer. "I think it's him," I said finally. She turned to me, confused. "Him, my ex," I whispered. "The one who hurt me." The words made my throat burn. I hadn't spoken about him in months. It wasn't because I forgot, it was because silence felt safer. But silence never stopped him before. She stepped closer and took my hand. "Are you sure?" she asked softly. I nodded. The weight of knowing was too familiar. I knew the way he watched, quiet and calculating. I knew the shape of his car, the tint on the windows, even from a distance. And most of all, I knew that if he was here, he wasn't just passing through. For the first time in a long time, fear returned like an old ache. But this time, I wasn't alone. I wasn't frozen. I wasn't the same girl who had once begged for mercy behind closed doors. I had changed. Still, the question echoed inside me, why now? And worse, what was he waiting for? I didn't sleep that night. Every creak in the hallway, every car that rolled by outside, felt like a warning. I kept the lights off, but my eyes stayed wide open, fixed on the ceiling like it could offer answers. She slept beside me, one arm loosely draped over my waist, her breathing calm, even. I envied her stillness. My mind was a storm, crashing with every memory I had tried to bury. The next morning, I stood by the window, staring down at the street. The car was back, same place, same angle, like it belonged there. I could barely make out the shape of someone in the driver's seat, but I didn't need to see his face to know. I felt it, that heaviness, that pressure, like a hand pressed against my chest. I knew it was him. She joined me by the window and followed my gaze. We didn't speak for a long time. Finally, she asked, "Do you want to go to the police?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to believe they'd help. But I remembered the last time I tried that. The questions, the doubt in their eyes, the way they asked what I had done to provoke him. Like my bruises were a language they refused to read. So I just said, "Not yet." We stayed home that day. I couldn't bring myself to leave. I tried to distract myself, washed the dishes, folded clothes, rearranged books I hadn't opened in years. But no matter what I did, my mind kept circling back to that car. To him. Why was he here now, after all this time? What did he want? That evening, I sat on the floor with my back against the couch while she rubbed my shoulders gently. I told her everything, not just about the car, but about what happened before. The nights I'd hidden in the bathroom with the lights off. The apologies that always came too late. The way I learned to flinch at the sound of footsteps behind me. She didn't interrupt. She didn't try to fix it. She just listened. And when I finished, she leaned in and kissed the top of my head. "He can't hurt you anymore," she said softly. "Not while I'm here." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the next morning, he followed me. I didn't see the car right away. I had walked to the corner store alone, just a short trip. I needed to prove to myself that I could still do that. But as I turned down our street on the way back, I felt it. That crawling sensation up my spine. I looked behind me, and there it was, creeping along the curb like a shadow. I quickened my pace. The car didn't speed up, but it stayed close. I could feel him watching me. The way he always used to. Quiet, patient, like a predator. When I reached the front steps, the car rolled to a slow stop. I didn't turn around. I opened the door and slammed it shut behind me, heart pounding in my throat. She was in the kitchen when I came in, and she ran to me the second she saw my face. "He followed me," I gasped. "He was right behind me." She didn't hesitate. She locked the door, pulled the curtains, and wrapped her arms around me. We stood there in silence, holding on to each other like we were the only thing keeping the walls from falling in. I didn't need to say it. She already knew. This wasn't over. The days started to blend together after that. I stopped going outside unless I had to. Every time I stepped onto the porch, I scanned the street, searching for that familiar shape. Sometimes it was there, parked in the same spot, like it had never left. Other times it was gone, but the absence didn't comfort me. It made things worse, because not knowing where he was, not knowing if he was close, was more terrifying than seeing him. She stayed close to me. She changed her schedule, worked from home when she could, and when she had to leave, she made sure someone checked in. Her presence made me feel safer, but not safe. There's a difference. I felt like a ghost in my own home, watchful, waiting, silent. He didn't make contact. Not directly. He never knocked, never called. But he didn't have to. His presence was a message all on its own. "I see you. I remember you. I still have power." That's what it felt like. A silent reminder that he was still capable of reaching me without saying a word. One night, I was sitting on the couch, the television flickering in front of me without sound. I wasn't really watching. My thoughts were elsewhere. She sat beside me, one hand resting gently on my knee. We hadn't spoken much that evening. Some fears are too heavy for words. And then, out of nowhere, she whispered, "He's outside." My heart jumped. I turned to her slowly, confused. "What do you mean?" "I just saw him. He's in the car, parked across the street again." I got up and walked to the window, staying to the side, peeking through the edge of the curtain. There he was. Lights off. Engine probably running. Just sitting. Watching. I could see the silhouette of his head, his posture unmistakable. He hadn't changed. I felt something break inside me. Fear, yes, but also something else. Anger. This wasn't just fear anymore. It was invasion. He was trespassing in my life, in my home, even without stepping through the door. And I was tired of it. She came up behind me, wrapped her arms around my waist, and rested her chin on my shoulder. "You don't have to be scared of him anymore," she said quietly. "I'm not sure I can stop," I whispered back. She didn't reply immediately. Then, softly, she leaned in closer to my ear, her breath warm against my skin. "Let him watch." It was only a whisper, but it echoed through my chest like thunder. I froze, the words bouncing around in my mind. She didn't mean it to provoke. She meant it as power. A declaration, not for him, but for me. Let him watch. He could sit out there all night. He could stare through his windshield, waiting for the fear he once saw in my eyes. But he wouldn't find it. Not this time, because I wasn't the same person anymore. I wasn't broken. I wasn't small. I wasn't his. I was loved. I stepped away from the window, turned to her, and nodded. That moment, that whisper, shifted something in me. It didn't erase the fear, but it gave me something stronger to hold on to. He could watch all he wanted, but he would never see me afraid again. The quiet after her whisper was louder than any scream I'd ever let out. I stood still, her words still ringing in my ears, and felt something unfamiliar building inside me, control. For the first time in years, I wasn't shrinking. I wasn't hiding. I was standing in full view of my past, and I wasn't flinching. She didn't look away from me. Her eyes were steady, calm, full of something I hadn't seen in a long time, certainty. She believed in me, even when I doubted myself. And that belief was like a hand on my back, gently guiding me forward. We sat together in silence for a while. The television still played in the background, but neither of us cared. My thoughts were elsewhere, back in the past, trapped in the rooms I thought I'd escaped. I remembered the times I felt invisible, unheard. The way I had to swallow my voice just to keep peace. How I learned to read every mood in his face so I could dodge what was coming. But now I could feel her hand in mine, grounding me, reminding me that I wasn't there anymore. I finally spoke. It's strange, isn't it? That after all this time, I still feel like I'm being held in place by something he did. She squeezed my hand gently. It's not strange. It's human. I looked out the window again. The car hadn't moved. He was still there, watching, waiting, probably wondering why I wasn't breaking like before. That thought stirred something bitter in my chest. A kind of rage I hadn't allowed myself to feel. I used to think being angry made me weak. That if I got mad, I'd become like him. But now I realized, it wasn't anger that made people cruel. It was control. And what he'd taken from me wasn't just peace, it was the right to feel. So I let myself feel it. All of it. The pain, the fear, the years of silence. I let it pour over me like a wave, and for the first time, I didn't try to hold my breath. I let myself drown in it, just for a moment. And when I came up again, I felt lighter. She leaned into me, resting her head on my shoulder. We don't have to pretend anymore, she said. Whatever you need to feel, whatever you need to say, I'm right here. I turned toward her, and the words came before I even thought them through. I don't want to run anymore. I want to take back what he stole. She nodded. Then we start now. It didn't mean the fear vanished. It didn't mean I suddenly felt brave. But it meant I wasn't going to let fear make my decisions for me. That night, I left the curtains open. I sat on the couch with her, lights on, doors locked, and heart pounding, but I didn't hide. I didn't turn away from the window. I let him see me. He needed to know that I was still standing. He needed to see what he had lost the moment I walked away. The next morning felt different, not because the fear had vanished, but because I had decided to face it head on. The weight on my chest hadn't gone away, but it was no longer paralyzing. I got out of bed before the sun rose, the apartment quiet except for the sound of the water heater clicking on. She was still asleep, curled on her side, her face peaceful. I stood in the hallway for a while just watching her, soaking in the calm she brought into my life. Then I turned and walked into the living room. The car wasn't there. For a moment, I thought I should feel relief. But I didn't. His absence felt more like a trick than a gift. A temporary retreat. I knew how he worked, vanishing just long enough for me to lower my guard. That's when he liked to strike. So we started preparing. We changed the locks that afternoon. She called a locksmith, and I stayed beside her the whole time, my palms sweating as the man worked on the door. I didn't like strangers in our space, but I liked feeling unsafe even less. When the locksmith was done, he handed me the new keys. They felt heavier than the old ones, like they meant something more now. Like control was slowly being returned to me. We also installed a camera near the front door. Not to catch him in the act, but to remind myself that we had eyes too. That we weren't helpless anymore. That night, we sat together on the floor with a notebook between us and made a list. People we could call, things we could do, ways we could protect ourselves if he showed up again. She was calm the whole time, steady and focused. But I could see the concern in her eyes. Not for herself, for me. I looked at her, feeling a mix of guilt and gratitude. "You don't have to do all this," I said softly. She looked up. "Yes, I do. Because I love you." The words hit me harder than I expected. I'd known it, of course, but hearing it out loud, in the middle of this mess, felt like a lifeline. Like no matter how ugly or heavy this story got, I wasn't carrying it alone. We also called someone I hadn't spoken to in a long time, my sister. She was one of the few people who knew pieces of the past, the darker chapters I never wanted to reread. I told her what was happening, and to my surprise, she didn't hesitate. "You need me there?" she asked. "No," I said, "I just need you to know. In case something happens." Her voice cracked slightly. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. That stayed with me, more than I expected. Over the next few days, we stayed alert but kept living. We didn't stop going outside, but we didn't go alone either. We didn't sleep with the curtains open, but we didn't close ourselves off from the world. He came back once, 3 days later. Same car, same spot, just watching, but I didn't freeze this time. I walked to the window, looked right at him, and stood there. Not hiding, not shaking. He didn't move, didn't drive away. And still, I stood there. She walked up beside me, slid her arm around my waist, and whispered again, like before. "Let him watch." And I did. Because this time, I wasn't scared. I was ready. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, just when I had started to believe he might never leave his car. The weather was warm, the kind of soft sunlight that made everything feel lighter. We had just returned from the grocery store, walking hand in hand, our steps slow and unhurried. We even laughed on the way up the stairs, a quiet, shared moment I thought we had earned after the fear-filled days. I unlocked the door, pushed it open, and stepped inside. She followed, placing the bags on the counter. The door was still wide open when I heard it, his voice. "Still pretending, huh?" I froze. Every part of my body stiffened, the sound slicing through me like cold steel. I turned slowly, and there he was. Not in the car this time. He was standing at the bottom of the steps, arms crossed, that same smug look I used to see just before everything fell apart. She stepped behind me, not out of fear, but out of instinct, to protect me. But I wasn't the same girl anymore. I didn't hide behind anyone now. He took a step closer. "You really think you're safe now with her?" I didn't answer right away. I studied his face, trying to understand what he wanted. Power, maybe. Control. The same thing he always craved. But there was something else, too, frustration. He expected me to fall apart. He expected tears, or silence, or a door slamming in panic. But I just stood there. "I'm not pretending," I said, voice steady. "I'm living, and you don't belong in that life." His jaw clenched. "You think she can protect you? You think she knows who you really are?" She stepped forward then, past me, fearless. "She doesn't have to pretend to be anything with me. And you're not welcome here." The way she said it, so calm, so clear, it knocked the wind out of him. He laughed, but it was hollow. Forced. "Is that right?" he said, glancing between us. "We'll see how long that lasts." He turned and walked back toward his car, shoulders stiff, hands in his pockets like he still thought he had the upper hand. But he didn't know that he had already lost. The minute he stepped out of that car and tried to play his old game, he lost. Because I didn't flinch. I didn't fold. I closed the door and locked it, the sound of the bolt clicking into place louder than his voice had ever been. My hands were shaking, but I didn't cry. She turned to me. "Are you okay?" I nodded slowly. "I think so." "No, actually, yes. I'm okay." That moment was a shift. It wasn't over, not entirely, but something fundamental had changed. He saw it, even if he didn't want to admit it. He saw that I wasn't afraid of him anymore. That his presence didn't bend me like it used to. We called the police that evening. Told them everything, about the stalking, the history, the confrontation. They came, took notes, asked questions. It felt exhausting but necessary. By the end of the night, we had a record of it all. A name, a report, a step forward, and when we lay in bed, the silence didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like peace. Not total, but real. The kind you earn. The next few days moved with a strange calm. The kind that doesn't quite feel like peace but isn't fear either, something in between. I wasn't looking over my shoulder constantly, but I hadn't let my guard down either. The report we filed gave me a small sense of control. It didn't erase the past, but it created a line I knew he couldn't cross without consequence. She was gentle with me during those days. Not walking on eggshells, but aware. Aware of when I needed quiet, when I needed space, when I needed to just feel her presence beside me without a single word. We didn't talk about him much, not because we were avoiding it, but because we had already said everything we needed to say. The silence between us was no longer made of fear, it was comfort. But I still didn't expect the letter. It arrived folded, tucked under the windshield wiper of her car. No envelope, no name, just a few handwritten lines on plain paper. I found it when I went to grab something from the passenger seat. My hands went cold the second I saw the familiar, slanted writing. I took it inside, sat on the couch, and read it aloud to her. His words were as bitter as ever. Full of blame, full of the same twisted love he used to wrap around his cruelty like a disguise. But this time, something was different. I didn't feel afraid. I felt angry. Not the kind of anger that burns hot and wild. This was colder, clearer. A realization that he wasn't trying to get me back. He was trying to pull me under. He wanted to shake me. Make me feel small. Remind me of who I used to be. But he didn't know who I was now. We went back to the police. Handed over the note, updated the report. They logged it, and to our surprise, they took it seriously. Maybe it was the officer we got that day. Maybe it was because they finally saw the pattern. But something clicked. 2 days later, we received word, a restraining order had been approved. I stared at the paper in my hands for a long time. It wasn't thick, just a few sheets, but it felt heavier than anything I'd held in a long time. It was more than a legal document. It was a boundary, a promise, a piece of my freedom signed and sealed. That night, we celebrated in our own quiet way. No balloons, no loud music. Just the two of us, sitting on the floor, eating takeout, candles flickering between us. She raised her glass to me, just soda, but it felt like champagne. To you, she said. To how far you've come. I smiled. To us. For surviving. For still loving. And we sat there, surrounded by the stillness of our small, warm apartment, finally breathing without tension in our lungs. I didn't know what would happen next. If he'd show up again. If he'd test the order. But I knew one thing for sure. Whatever came next, I wouldn't face it the same way I had before. I had reclaimed something he never thought I would, myself. The days turned into weeks, and little by little, the tension began to loosen its grip on my life. It didn't disappear completely. I still checked over my shoulder sometimes, still paused at the sound of footsteps behind me, but it was different now. The fear didn't control me anymore. It visited, sure, but it no longer lived in me. He never came back after the letter and the restraining order. No more parked cars. No more whispers from the past creeping into my day-to-day. Maybe he finally understood that he had lost. Maybe the silence was just a different kind of message. Either way, I didn't care. His absence wasn't the reward, I was. My mornings returned to their quiet rhythm. She'd bring me coffee in my chipped mug again, humming while she moved around the kitchen like she had all the time in the world. We stopped talking about him. Not because we were pretending it never happened, but because we had talked enough. What needed to be said had been said. What needed to be done had been done. And I had changed. I found myself smiling more. Laughing without guilt. Sitting on the porch without looking over my shoulder every few minutes. I started reading again, dancing again when no one was watching. The heaviness that used to sit on my chest was now just a memory, something I remembered carrying, but didn't anymore. There were still moments, of course. Sometimes I'd wake up in a sweat, heart racing, unsure if I'd dreamed of him or just remembered too clearly. But even then, she was always there, reaching out for me in the dark, whispering softly, grounding me, reminding me I wasn't alone. She never once made me feel like a burden. One afternoon, as we walked through the park, hand in hand, the sun warm on our skin, I stopped and looked at her. Really looked. And in her eyes, I saw everything I had been missing for so long: safety, joy, possibility. I never thought I'd feel normal again, I said. She smiled. You're not normal. You're stronger than that. I laughed, tears stinging the corners of my eyes. You know what I mean. She nodded. I do. And I'm proud of you. That moment stayed with me. Not because it was loud or dramatic, but because it was soft and honest. I realized then that healing didn't always look like a big breakthrough. Sometimes, it looked like waking up without dread, smiling for no reason, loving someone without apology, and I finally let myself love her completely. Without fear, without walls, without looking back. When I think about that night now, the headlights, the whisper, the car parked across the street, I no longer feel frozen. I feel powerful. I remember the sound of her voice in my ear, quiet but fierce. Let him watch. Not out of revenge, not out of defiance, but because we were no longer afraid. And that was the difference. So to anyone listening, anyone who's been followed by shadows from the past, you are not what they did to you. You are not the fear they planted in your chest. You are not their grip. You are your own beginning. And your story does not end with them. If this reached you, if this made you feel seen, stay with us. There's more to say, more to share. Hit subscribe, drop your voice in the comments, and remember, you're not alone. You never were. Thank you for listening to this story. If it reached your heart, if it reminded you of your own strength, or of someone you love, know this: healing is not a straight line, and survival isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just waking up and choosing to keep going, even when the past tries to pull you back. This story wasn't just about fear. It was about reclaiming power. About love that stands firm in the face of darkness. And about how even a whisper, when spoken with truth and courage, can echo louder than a scream. If you or someone you know has faced something similar, don't stay silent. Talk to someone. Reach out. Help is real, and so is recovery. If this story moved you, please consider liking, sharing, or subscribing. Your support helps us bring more voices forward, stories that matter, that connect, and that remind us all we are not alone. Until next time, take care of your heart, stand in your truth, and keep walking forward. You're stronger than you know.